Did you know that no one tracks the police shootings of innocent bystanders? That is not in any kind of federal database where they track it. They just, if it happens, it happens, and they deal with it at that point. But there's no tracking of it.
Welcome back. Our next story contains disturbing images, and that's because it shows police shooting the wrong people, innocent bystanders. But a CBS News investigation found not one federal agency is tracking this issue, and holding officers accountable for those mistakes has been difficult. Our national correspondent Jonathan Bigliotti explains.
Body cameras from police officers across the country show the chaos, the crossfire,
what did I do? Why did I get shot?
and the collateral damage when bystanders are caught in the middle in New York, Colorado, and California.
You need to render aid to the I got it.
Innocent people such as Mark Churillo of Chandler, Arizona. In March of 2024, police responded to a call about his neighbor who was armed with a gun and making threats.
Acting crazy.
Churillo came outside, he says, to warn police about his wife and young children inside.
If there was going to open fire, I don't want that hitting my house.
Officers were staged on either side of the road.
2.6, negative 21.
One pair was focused on the real threat.
Luciano, I want to help you, but I need you to drop the gun.
Opening fire on the neighbor, but the other officers never got the message the suspect was down.
I remember making a gesture with my hand, but saying, you're going to hit my house. And that's it.
5 seconds later, Churillo was also hit, shot by an officer staged on the other side of the road, who, according to Chandler police, mistook Churillo for the suspect.
We have an innocent.
And I fell right there. And my children and my wife saw from me from that door. I was laying right here yelling for help.
Churillo's spine was severed, and he's been in a wheelchair ever since.
No!
A CBS News review of police records, body camera footage, court documents, and local news reports from around the country found more than 50 cases since 2015 of innocent bystanders shot by police. Law enforcement watchdogs tell us the number of cases is likely higher. There's no organization tracking this issue.
The Department of Justice, our federal government should be keeping track of these stats.
Lawyer Benjamin Taylor represents Mark Churillo.
Now, 100%, I think that, of course, a lawsuit's going to come out for the city, and it did come out for this. But I do think that they should be tracking the stat. I don't know if it's going to stop anything, but we all know if you've done any kind of shooting training, you're supposed to be aware of what's behind the target, around the target, and everything like that, so you don't shoot something by mistake, or you be aware of what's behind it when you're shooting. Officers should be aware of that. Now, can they control everything? No, you can't say that. They cannot control everything. But to say that no one's keeping track, not one person is gathering the data to see if, there's more police shootings of innocent people in this specific situation or this specific location. There might be a trend that we need to worry about. There's not enough police training in this location or something. I feel like it would give us some data, not saying that it will stop it, because I think that's always going to happen when we have police and everything like that. But we should at least track the data. Come on, there should be something to where the public can know, that's what's going on. But let's keep going.
Who is suing the Chandler Police Department and the city. He says these cases are hard to win because officers are covered by what's called qualified immunity, which can shield government employees from civil lawsuits.
We understand that there are good officers out there, but when an officer makes a mistake, they need to be held accountable for their actions.
CBS News reached out to the Chandler Police Department requesting an interview with the chief. A spokesperson tells us because of the lawsuit, they're not granting interviews.
Well, we already know that that's what they're going to say. But didn't the officer admit that he mistaked him for the suspect? That's completely different than you shooting at the suspect and someone behind him accidentally gets shot. You aimed for him because you assumed he was the suspect. That sounds like you did something wrong. But I mean, they don't track it. Let's see.
Police would say that these incidents are complicated, that they have to make split-second decisions. What do you say to that?
At least take a real quick, more of a look instead of just firing automatically.
The officers in Churrillo's case were cleared of any criminal wrongdoing.
Ready.
Mark Churrillo, a father of 5, will never walk again.
Oh, God.
Now, police officers told Jonathan Bigliotti that the threat of being sued makes it difficult to simply do their jobs. They say there's genuine concern in the law enforcement community about how this also affects the ability to recruit new officers.
I mean, can I see that? Yes, I can see how an officer might be wary to unload his weapon because of the possible lawsuit that can come. But should not officers be wary of unloading their weapon in the first place? Shouldn't they be aware and be cautious of what can happen when they shoot? Of course, you have to make the decision on if it's best to shoot and not to shoot. But there are times when people, because they have qualified immunity, that is what's given to them. And would some people try to abuse? If they didn't have that, would some public members try to abuse that system or abuse suing the police? Come on now, we know what would happen. But there are instances where it sounds like at least the police department needs to be sued or someone needs to be held responsible. And maybe it's the officer. But let's get over into this AI breakdown, y'all, just to go into more detail about this whole thing. So as we know, when an innocent bystander is shot by the police, it triggers a parallel sequence of administrative, criminal, and civil and emotional developments. While these cases are technically rare, investigation shows that they happen steadily across the country without any federal tracking. So the involved officer is immediately placed on paid administrative leave. This is a standard protocol rather than disciplinary action. So an internal affairs unit, or more commonly known as commonly an outside agency like the State Bureau of Investigation, takes over the analysis of the body cam footage, ballistics, and the chaotic timeline. Depending on the results of the investigation, the officer may return to duty, face internal disciplinary action, or be fired. So as we know, the criminal charges against the officer who strike bystanders are exceedingly rare. Because of the split-second standard, courts and prosecutors heavily weigh whether the officer had to make a split-second decision to stop an active deadly threat. If the officer used the force against the original suspect was deemed legally justified, the unintended injury to a bystander is often legally excused under the doctrine of transferred instance or reasonable self-defense. In many jurisdictions, if the officer are engaged in a shootout with a fleeing felon, and the criminal suspect can be charged with the injury or the death of the bystander, even if the bullet physically came from the police officer's gun. The law argues that the criminal actions created the deadly environment. I can see that. Okay. If investigation proves that the officer acted with gross negligence or complete recklessness, firing wildly into a dense crowd against policy, the officer can face criminal charges ranging from reckless endangerment to manslaughter. And as we know, a lot of times it ends up being a lawsuit. So bystanders or surviving family members frequently sue the police department and local government for medical bills, permanent trauma, or wrongful death. However, getting compensation is a legal uphill. So in the federal civil rights lawsuit, officers are heavily shielded by the qualified immunity that we talked about. Courts routinely rule that the accidental shooting does not automatically violate the bystander's Fourth Amendment right because the bystander was not intentionally targeted of a seizure. So victims often have a better luck suing for basic negligence in the state's courts. Some cities prefer to settle quietly for large sums to avoid bad publicity. Publicity. So major cities take a firm legal stance fighting these lawsuits for years in courts. They argue that the collateral damage of the police shootout is an unavoidable public hazard when stopping an active criminal. I mean, I can see that. I can see that when we have police and we have criminals who are going to run and things like that, someone is going to get hurt and maybe an innocent bystander. But to not even track it? Okay. So bystanders face life-threatening, life-altering physical recovery like we've seen in the video, and deep psychological trauma, often compounded by monumental medical debt. The legitimate use of force experts note that an accidental shooting of an innocent bystander causes immense career-ending psychological trauma, severe PTSD for the officer involved, and they may choose to resign or retire early. But is that enough? But the main thing I want to get through this section is, why aren't they at least tracking it? I feel like that's some good data to at least have on hand. If we already know it happened, you might as well make a federal list that tracks this happening. See, make sure it's not rising, or if it's remaining steady, and just, is it different from area? What is the trends that we can learn from this? Some people might just say it's just more information that makes people distrust cops in the first place, but I think more information is better than no information. But let me know your thoughts, and let me know if you disagree with anything I said. It's a wild situation, and it's tragic in that man's case we saw, who ended up being paralyzed. But what are your thoughts?